I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm super nervous, but ignore that. I'm happy because I have the possibility to talk about something I'm pretty passionate about, and that is actually the topic of the talk tonight, freedom to grow and why mindset is all that counts, and what freedom and responsibility has actually got to do with that. If you are wondering why there is a Star Wars theme, don't try to find any logical explanation for that. I'm just a sci-fi geek, and I thought I could use some force for my talk tonight. So that's the only reason, actually. Okay. So we live in a world where it's not necessarily big will beat small. We are in a world now where it's the fast beating the slow. And the question is, what does companies need if in this kind of environment, when they don't just want to survive but thrive in an environment of that like that? The interesting thing is, no matter which company in the world you ask, they are all completely sure to have the right answer, and they all agree that what you need, the right people. That is basically the one thing they all can agree upon. What they need is to thrive the right people. So the question is, how do you define right people? For a lot of companies, they are looking at, for example, CVs that are very straight, that ideally maybe come from people from top-notch universities, as a first-class degree, CVs that have no gap in them, CVs that have the strategic move from one position to the next. That is actually not so much what I personally believe is, what we're looking for. When I do interviews, what I'm trying to find is if people have a growth mindset. So this is the one thing that I actually believe makes all the difference. And the growth mindset, you might be familiar with that, but in general, it's the ultimate belief that something like intelligence, strength, talent, that this is something that you can develop. It is not something you're given by birth, and that's fixed. It's like, here's your 110% IQ, and here is your 3 talents, and here are your 5 strengths. It's not fixed. It is something that you can fundamentally develop. So the growth mindset is something that I'm looking in interviews to spot, so to speak, but it's not something that I use sort of super questions to really figure out, is somebody just pretending to have a growth mindset, or is it something, how much, is it that big or that big or that big? What I'm trying to see is if there's willingness to embrace the growth mindset. Is there already a sparkle? Is there already an interest? That is pretty much all it needs. What is important is that I'm trying to help or to find people who are normal people, ordinary people, who have the willingness and the desire to achieve extraordinary things. And this is somebody who has done a lot of research when it comes to the growth mindset. That's Carol Dweck, and maybe Master Yoda, who spend an awful lot of time and resources and thinking into that topic of growth mindset. There's a really wonderful TED Talk that you should all watch, that she's done, that has inspired me actually quite a bit. But what is actually maybe equally important, maybe a little bit more important, is the right environment where you put these people. Because if your environment looks like this, nothing will grow. No matter how super developed a person is, nothing will grow in this kind of environment. So what you need is more like, fertile ground. A ground where it is, so to speak, difficult not to succeed. Where it is easy to, no matter how small the seed might be that you put in, it will just be able to grow and to flourish. And what you need in order to have such fertile ground is basically a culture that I believe should be freedom and responsibility. That is a culture that treats people as adults, that is very much based on trust, the trust that you do have the right people in the company, the trust these people are willing and hoping for working together to do a great job, and the trust that they will not misuse the freedom that you give them. So treat them as adults, give them a lot of trust. And the other thing that is quite important, you need to give them also the freedom by not clipping the wings for everybody, by implementing tons of guidelines and rules and whatever, because you fear that if I don't put these in, they might misuse the trust. Give them the freedom and they will pay it back with a lot of ownership and responsibility. There's one other ingredient that we need, and that is the Pygmalion effect. That actually is, so to speak, a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if you treat a person not as they currently are, but to their potential, that this is something that brings out the best in people. You might all have experienced this kind of Pygmalion effect. For example, if you go to a really fancy restaurant, the waiters treat you really well, you know, and all of a sudden you sit very straight, you whisper a little bit, you use all the cutlery on the table. So just because they treat you as if you are a very posh person, all of a sudden you behave like a very posh person. So this is the Pygmalion effect that I find quite important as the third ingredient. So the magic formula. The magic formula, I think, is growth mindset, plus freedom and responsibility, plus Pygmalion effect, and that is, so to speak, the definition of the right person. Me, if you would look at my CV, it would probably look a little bit like this. What you would probably look in vain for would be the top-notch degree. What you would probably look in vain for is the strategic moves from one important company to the next. What you would find is a pretty rough start in the beginning. Some weird jobs, like I worked at reception, I was a secretary, I was in recruiting, and I also came to the conclusion that New York did not need another bookshop. But what I had was people that believed in me. I was lucky enough to have people who gave me trust, who helped me to develop my own growth mindset, and who gave me freedom. And this is why I'm really, really grateful that I now have the opportunity in my role, in my job, in my company, to give back, to help other people to have this opportunity. Thank you.